wrote this poem, published it, as it happens, around the time he was 50. I've just turned 50, so whether or not these two things are related, I don't know. But he said, he talked about waiting until he was 50 to credit marbles. And I suppose the idea was that the poetry up until then had been rather, in every sense, earthbound, boggy. And then after that it becomes more aware of the ethereal or the airbound, if you want to put it that way. So that was the line, really, that I used as the basis of the quartet. And there are really two kinds of music in the quartet, a rather ethereal, high music, especially on the two violins, but also the viola. And then an earthy kind of dance-like music, including an Irish jig and kind of bagpipe drones. The string quartet is such a resourceful medium that you can do all these effects, you know, without having to hire a bagpipe player to do it. So this was the idea. The title, a bit confusingly, comes from Shakespeare's The Tempest, because I thought, you know, thinking of this, the aerated music and the earthy music, I thought, well, Ariel and Caliban, you know, it's really that. And Heaney is a great Shakespearean, and he's written brilliantly on Shakespeare, so it seemed appropriate, really, to tie the two together, yeah, in that way. So there's a whole element of Shakespeare's Tempest in this piece as well, in all its modest 8 minutes of length. Actually, I mean, I've written a lot of vocal music, but people say to me, well, you've never said Seamus Heaney, which that's still maybe in the pipeline. But Heaney's a slightly difficult poet to set for that reason, because I feel so close to it, and just the intonation of his poetry. I did grow up in Derry, and I went to the same school as him, and I think some of the people, it was a 20-year gap obviously, but some of the people who would have taught me English would have remembered Heaney, either as teachers of him or as contemporaries of his, as actual students. I can remember when the book North came out. I've also written an orchestral piece which borrows that title. And that was about 1975, and it was a huge event. I mean, the book in the first print run, I think, sold 30,000 copies or something. I mean, for a contemporary book of contemporary poetry, this is completely unparalleled, you know. And Heaney still sells in that way, of course. I think I had to go back to being sort of in my 20s and out of school and out of English as a learning environment. And then I just started reading him again for myself. And that's really when I started becoming a fan of Heaney. And I do think he's a very marvellous poet. We rehearsed the piece last Thursday, a week ago, at DIT. In open forum. There was some DIT staff and composers were there. So it made it a nice kind of informal gathering. And the quartet played the piece splendidly, I think. And I know it's the third quartet I've written that I would acknowledge. But as you say, it's the first quartet I've had played by the RTÉ Vanbrugh. And I think it'll sound good. I love writing for string quartet. I mean, I think that if the commissions come in at a sufficient rate, I would quite happily write string quartets for the rest of my life and nothing else. That's an exaggeration. But if you were confined to one medium for some obscure reason, if you had to be, I think that quartet is the medium I would pick. You know, what you can do with those four instruments and those four players is, you know, limitless, really. I don't tend to write. I'll probably be different from some colleagues in this respect. My music does not dally very much with experimentalism in the techniques. I tend to ask the instruments to do the orthodox things, because I think after all, these instruments have 300 or 400 years of evolution behind them, you know. There are certain things they are designed to do, and I just feel there are certain elements that they aren't, you know. And when I see some of the things that people are asked to do for too expensive, beautiful instruments, you know, it makes me want to cry in contemporary pieces. But within that limitation that I set myself, I like to use the full repertoire of things that the quartet can do. I had to interrupt a bigger project to write this short quartet. Take about 2 months out to do it. And that's a symphony I'm working on, for which I have what we call a major bursary from the Arts Council. So that's an ongoing project. Big pieces take me rather a long while to write, so I'm not advising anyone to hold their breath, but I'm looking forward to it when it's finished. I think that what the string quartet will end up being, among other things, is a kind of study on the symphony. Because as any composer will tell you, as you imply, when you're working on bigger pieces, you know, they become like there's a kind of hydraulic force with them, and every other thought process you have kind of gets sucked into them in some way. I think that's the case with this quartet. The sound world of which will be, I'm sure, rather similar to the symphony.